You or someone you love needs help for an addiction. Where do you turn? Foundations Recovery Network offers individualized treatment for the whole person. Our goal goes beyond short-term sobriety. We address substance abuse and co-occurring mental health issues together, providing a firm foundation for long-term recovery. The first step is often the hardest, but we're here with a free assessment, insurance information, and treatment options. Our confidential helpline is available 24/7, so call 877-714-1318 and discover the Foundations Recovery Network difference today.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in, and thanks to you for supporting the show. Do I need a sponsor? That's a question I have asked myself many times, and I've also had it proposed to me many times, especially in some of the emails that we get here at Sober Guy. And I think it's a very valid question. And if you don't know, if you've never had a sponsor, if you've never worked with anybody one-on-one before, it can be intimidating a bit, I guess, and it can be a bit of kind of like jumping into the unknown. So today, I'm really excited, really pumped up to introduce you to a good friend and mentor of mine, Buddy C. Buddy is also my sponsor, and Buddy is all the way out in Georgia. For those of you who don't know, I'm in Northern California, representing the recovery movement in the Bay Area, all the way up to Sacramento, and really just in Northern California in general. And I'm really honored to be able to do that up here. It's my home. I've been here forever, and it's amazing to me. There's a lot of good resources, ton of good sponsors, ton of good people out here. It's amazing to me that somehow Buddy and I were connected. We talk a little bit about this in the episode. He's all the way in Georgia, and I'm all the way out in Cali, and we connect, and we've started to build this relationship, and he's helping me work through the steps. And it's just been a really amazing thing, and I'm excited to share it with you guys today in hopes that Buddy can help provide some insight into a little bit about himself, and then also what it is to be a sponsor and what it is to be a sponsee, and how that can kind of help guide people on the right track to getting sober and more importantly, staying sober. So we're going to get into talking to Buddy in just a minute. First, I want to tell you about DxRx. Do you want to stop or reduce your drinking? It's your treatment, your goals, your life. DxRx is a new treatment that provides access to alcohol treatment specialists, safe medication, and ongoing monitoring for people who want to stop or reduce their drinking, all through a simple phone app. Let me tell you a little bit about how it works. So you go to DxRx. If you go to thatsoberguy.com, there's a link in the right-hand column. You can click on that link, and it will take you to their site. And you can do a quick test on there, and you can find out what your level of drinking is. You can find out kind of where you're at, and you can start the process of getting some more information. You're going to speak with one of their physicians, and is going to create a treatment plan that fits your lifestyle. They monitor your progress with a breathalyzer and the DxRx mobile app. And they also offer and provide safe, effective, non-habit forming medicine that will ease alcohol cravings. So go to thatsoberguy.com, check it out on there, and provide us some feedback too. Please send us an email. Tell us what you think about it. If you did go check it out, we would love to hear. Also want to give some love to Foundations. Once again, Foundations Recovery Network. They're back on board supporting the show. And we love them. We've built a great relationship with them. They're some awesome people, and they have a ton of good resources. You can find all those resources out at foundationsrecoverynetwork.com. So thanks again to them. And then also, real quick, and we're going to jump into Buddy, in just a minute, I just want to give a little love to Sober Nation. Tim over at Sober Nation and their team is doing some great things, and they help support the show on soberpodcast.com. There's a plethora of podcasts on there. Awesome content. You can support the show by supporting us on Patreon. It helps us provide the best no bullshit free recovery content. So please hop on that soberguy.com and click on the link there and support us there. You can also, last thing, you can also help support us by leaving us a review on iTunes. That's really one of the best ways, and I really do greatly appreciate all the awesome reviews that we get. So thank you again. Here's Buddy C. All right, what's up? Thanks for tuning in today. Today's guest, I'm honored to have him on. It's been a long time coming, I guess, but at the same time, I think everything happens in due time and in the right moment. So today I am very excited to announce a friend of mine and also my sponsor, Buddy C. Buddy, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shane. Happy to be here, my friend.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. We've had some great conversations, some great insight. And I've learned a lot of things since we started working together. When did we start? In November, I think, maybe October, November, somewhere around there.
Yeah, we started. I think we started talking last summer.
Yeah.
Is that right? And then we started. You committed in the fall, and then we got started on a weekly basis. I think from there.
Yeah. Just pretty cool, man. How it happened, almost by, I'd like to say accident, but I think there's definitely a bigger picture than that. And maybe that's something, how did we meet? Like, let's kind of jump. I don't even think we've ever talked about that on a private call yet. Was it through O's podcast, through the Share podcast? I know you've been on O's show before.
I think it was when you were doing the weekly, the webcast you did.
Yeah, the meetings, like the weekly meetings or whatever.
Yeah, I came to that a couple of times, and then I heard you on a podcast, and what you were taught, I think you were struggling with the whole fight of everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of responded in an email because it really spoke to me. And I said, maybe I got something I can share with him that would help him on that. Yeah. And then we got to talking after that. And I think if I remember correctly, that was how it happened. And we just started chatting and figured out God was putting us together, you know?
Yeah, definitely, man. And, I think that's a great point you bring at the end, God putting us together, because I think I've talked about this a couple times before when I've had two quote unquote sponsors that I previously worked with, and they were both good dudes, but man, there was just something that just didn't work, you know, and maybe it was me internally, you know, messing it up. I don't know. In this case, when you and I kind of got together, we started just kind of chatting it up, and it just kind of fell into place, man. Kind of like one of those loving relationships, you know, that you just, I saw Buddy's eyes and I looked deep into them. Buddy's going, man, come on, man. What's going on here? Nah, but it was cool, man. It was just like, it was something that just, I really do believe God kind of connected us in that way, man. And it's been a cool thing, man, to get to know you. And I just greatly appreciate the time that you give, not only to me, but for those of you who don't know out there listening, Buddy, sponsors a number of different dudes out there and is doing a lot of good things. So why don't we kind of jump into that, man? Tell us about a little background about yourself and about what you're up to today.
Sure. Before we do that though, Shane, that's just God doing it for you. He brings you who you need when you need it, you know, and that's all part of that, just learning to let go of this deal. And we learn to do that in everything, you know. I really started looking for a spiritual solution when I was 13 years old. I got, and this is, I'll talk some Bible stuff because I know you have a Christian base with what you do. And if I sponsor several guys in AA, and we don't talk Bible if they're not Christian, I don't talk Bible. I talk all AA. So I'll be a little more, I never even talked to any of them about this. But I got saved, filled with the Spirit, got involved in a little Spirit-filled church in our local community, very active in my early teens, and all through high school. I didn't drink, I can count on one hand the times I smoked pot and all that stuff in high school. So, I mean, it's, I was very straight laced through, very involved in church.
Yeah.
That whole time up until I didn't really start drinking heavy until I got in my late 20s when I'm 51 now.
So in high school, it was just kind of testing the waters out a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe
a little
smoke
bit,
little
just
pot
a time
here
or
and
two,
there.
and then I'd get back in church, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'd say, man, this isn't for me. And I'd feel bad about it, like I was going to hell. So I'd get back in church. So I'd feel better about it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of, bribe with heaven and blackmail with hell kind of deal, My feet started getting warm and I said, I better get back and I'd
Smoke
repent.
pot, you're going to hell.
That's it,
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's how they kept us in line,
Yeah.
Where they threatened us with hell.
That's kind of that law, that law versus spirituality, I guess, huh? Or the law of God. I mean, not that there's not a law of God, but interesting. Anyways, go ahead.
It is because what happens a lot of times, I think, is that folks don't know what to do with freedom, so they try to restrict it.
Yeah.
And in restricting it, they think they're helping, and they could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, I stayed in church all through high school on from there, and had a pretty uneventful, all those years. And then what really got me toward alcohol was when I was in business in my late 20s, I started having some business pressures and stresses that my relationship with God really did not help. And so I started drinking heavier and heavier as a coping mechanism. And then I found that I could get some relief when I drank. So I thought, gosh, I said, this is okay. And by then I knew, I really wasn't concerned with the heaven hell issue, at that point. I kind of a little more basis in my relationship with God than that. But what happened was alcohol turned on me, and all of a sudden I was drinking all of the time. And if I wasn't drinking, I was wanting to drink.
Yeah.
So that was the whole deal. And so it had me, what they say that you have a drink, the drink has a drink, and the drink has you.
Yeah.
And that's the progression, and that's what happened. And so, and I was trapped. And I will say,
what did you drink?
90 proof Smirnoff.
So vodka, mix it with a little something, or do you drink
Not
it
just
straight?
vodka, not just silver label, 90 proof.
Yeah.
I'd skip if they didn't have it. I'd go to another liquor store and find it. For whatever reason, I resonated to that one. Yeah. Huh. So
it's almost like ritualistic, huh? In a sense, like it's like you're, I don't know. You get so fixated on this certain way, and have control over that certain way that it has to be like that, and you're willing to drive across town to go get the other, even though there's other choices, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and so I would, I was an orange juice guy until I put on some weight, and then I want to lose weight, so I looked online on all the diets that I could do and still drink. And the only one was Atkins, and I had to switch my mixer from orange juice to Crystal Light lemonade. So.
Gotta watch the weight there. Hey, man, you were being creative, what the hell?
Hey, I lost, 8 or 10 pounds, and then I got pancreatitis. So put me in a hospital. I had, they told my wife that I had a 50-50 chance of living, to go pick out my pallbearers.
Really?
Yeah, and we haven't talked about that, I don't think.
No, we haven't. I haven't heard that.
I was 36 when it happened. That was 01. So is that right? Yeah, I was 36. So that happened. I had 2 surgeries. I was in the hospital a total of 6 weeks off and on over the course of the next 5 months. I went from 193 to 133 pounds.
Damn. Yeah. What's that?
And I came out, I'm 175 now. Yeah. I'm 175 now. And, I'm healthy at 175.
Yeah.
And I was down to 133 pounds.
Damn.
Came out and was drinking again within a couple of months.
Really? After having all those health issues, and the doctor basically saying, like, you're going to die pretty much if you continue.
Yeah. I lost 90% of my pancreas, and they had to do a surgery and take a piece of my intestine and tie it in to where my pancreas used to be.
Really?
For weeks, I had 2 tubes coming out of my stomach, draining pseudocyst bags outside of my stomach.
Damn. So you can actually see, are those bags up? Like, you can see the shit coming out of your stomach?
Yeah, there was a tube coming out of my stomach out of a hole in 2 places.
Wow.
And
What's the
alcohol
recovery?
had such a hold.
What's the recovery process on that like? I mean, are you in the hospital for a couple months or?
Yeah, I was in the hospital. The longest stint was 2 weeks, and then they did a surgery to fix it.
Oh, I see.
So that was what the second surgery was for.
So
was to fix that.
When you're in that spot like that, are you, at least at that point, are you still thinking, man, I need to change some things? Or are you thinking, I can't wait to get the hell out of here so I can go get my 90 proof?
No.
Or is it a mix?
What I was thinking was that, alcohol really was not my problem. It had to be something else.
Man, it's so baffling, I guess, right?
It is. It really is, So I would, so I got out, and for months I didn't drink. Doctor said, hey, if you drink, you're probably going to die. You don't need to drink anymore. And he said, how much did you drink? And I said, I drank, I was pretty honest. I mean, I was on pain pills at the time, so I was a little more honest than I'd normally be.
Yeah.
And, I said, I drink a gallon of Smirnoff a week. And he said, that's what it was. He said, that was your problem. He said, 40% of the time it's alcohol and 40% it's gallbladder. And then 20% they just don't know. And so I assume it's the alcohol. So I can tell you some disgusting, some really bad. I mean, it was just bad. It was awful. But I got out, and for months I didn't drink. And then slowly, I remember one time I stopped and got a tall boy beer to drink. I only drank beer when I was thirsty or on my way to the liquor store,
Yeah.
And so I drank a tall boy with a pain pill, and I said, oh, that's so good. I said, maybe I can have another one. And so a few days later, I went and got another beer, and before long, I was back at the liquor store getting a bottle of liquor. So, and then
did you kind of try to justify that? Well, I'm just gonna drink beer now, because that's like a common one that you hear a lot. Like, well, maybe the doctor says, vodka is really jacking me up, or whatever it is, whiskey, whatever, it's really jacking me up. Said I could die. If I kind of switch over and I just drink wine or I just drink beer, maybe that will, that'll still give me the same effect that I'm looking for, but it's not as bad on my health. I mean, did you kind of justify it like that, or was it just?
No, I knew it was. It
didn't matter.
No, it didn't matter.
At least you're honest.
So I just I went on, and I ended up eventually getting in AA. My wife gave me some consequences and said, hey, you get your crap together or else. And so I ended up, I was actually at the out at the lake. It's an hour from where we live. And I had some Xanax, and I popped some Xanax and drank some vodka and woke up in jail. So
really?
Yeah. So I had my one DUI that I got.
Oh, I see.
And this was in November of 2002, or that was in September of 2002. So anyway, had that to deal with. At that time, I said, I got to make a change because everybody's on my tail, and I got to do something here. So that's when I started going to counseling and going to all those things, and work to start in AA at that point.
Was that?
And I went to I'm sorry.
Was that the thing that kind of pushed you over, the DUI?
It was.
Was that like the breaking point kind of?
The legal consequence,
Yeah.
Because, here I am, woke up in jail and the whole deal going on. I was embarrassed. And, for me in business, I'm in the real estate business and had been for a number of years. This happened in a neighboring town, so no one even knew that it had happened. And a lot of people here still have no clue it ever happened. So, so I didn't have that shame to deal with.
Yeah.
In my hometown, so it was a neighboring town, so it was a neighboring county, so it all happened over there. But there was still shame with it, and I still regretted it. But I saw something had to change.
Yeah.
Had to change. So that's when I started going to AA then, and it was still just a step forward. 6 years of in and out of AA before I was able to start putting any time together. Do
you remember your first meeting?
Yeah, I do.
What was that? What was that like? I have a lot of questions, about AA and about what I don't.
Of course, I
don't like the meeting for this, this reason, or I love the meeting for this reason. I'm just curious what your first experience was like.
Well, I was whipped when I went to my first meeting, or thought I was, and I went to a neighboring town, the same town I got the DUI in. I went to a meeting over there, And because I wouldn't go in my hometown.
Trying to hide out a little bit.
That's right. So it's 30 miles away.
You also had a lot of responsibility, with your job at the time too, right? So I mean, there's that.
Yeah, I was self-employed with a lot of business things, and people trusted me with a lot of money and different things. So I felt, I wanted to, I thought I was a lot more important than I was, and so I thought I needed to protect my reputation, so to speak. So, but I went, and the guy leading that was the first time really I ever got hope that it would work for me, because I saw someone who said they drank like I drank. I believed them, and because I drank at home, I didn't drink around anyone. So I did my own thing, and I didn't think anyone else drank or had the same issues I had. I just didn't know anyone that did. So this guy did, and he didn't seem to be as smart as I was. So I said, if this guy can get it, I know I can. Shane, I've had 3 different sponsors, and I had the sponsor I needed at the time. For me, everyone had their purpose. My first guy I had was a retired Army air traffic controller. He was in and out of the program for years before he got sober. And just like I was going to do, it was like God doing for me and putting me together with the right people before I had even a clue as to what was going on, and like it was all by design and not my design.
Yeah.
Because that's so much more than I could even figure out, And so he helped me through for those 6 years that I was in and out. I would try, and I'd go a week or a month, or I think one time I even went 8 or 10 months, and I never got a year. And then I would drink again. And it was just back and forth. I kept going back to AA the whole time because I knew for me, AA was the answer. And I knew that if I kept going, whether I was getting it or not had no bearing on what the answer was. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't about, it didn't work for me. Well, I knew it worked, and I knew it would work for me eventually. But, and then I eventually figured out what I was missing. I really hadn't prayed the prayer. And the prayer is, God, get me sober regardless of what it takes. Do what it takes. I'm done. That kind of honesty, and that kind of willingness, and that kind of sincerity, and that kind of powerlessness.
Yeah.
That it took 6 years of alcohol beating me up back and forth before I was ready to pray that prayer. And when I heard I prayed every day. I asked God to help me with it. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't do any of those things. I did all that before I got in AA, know. I mean, I was involved in a church when I was drinking heavy, and I was like, I can't get it. There's something I'm missing. I talked to my pastor about it. I mean, all those things. Yeah. And I never could. It was like the connection between me and God just was not there. I mean, it was gone.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to make that connection, And so once I prayed that, it's funny. When I heard myself pray it, and I thought, crap, am I really? That's not what I thought, but we're keeping it clean.
Yeah.
Crap, did I really just pray this? I heard it coming out of my mouth. I heard it with my ears coming out of my mouth, and I wanted to take the words and pull them back,
Yeah.
Because I said, I don't know if I want that. I'm not ready for that. I'm sitting here not ready for that after all the consequences.
Yeah. Well, I guess because I can remember similar thoughts like that. The thought of having to give up that crutch, that thought of having to give up my tool or my outlet that I've known for so long. It's like a girlfriend almost, you know what I mean? Like who do I turn to when I really am feeling like crap, or when I'm feeling really good? I turn to some drinks or some dope or whatever, the choice might be at that time. And so the thought of giving that up, man, that's just kind of hitting me right now too. I mean, that is the true surrender of it. Like I'm ready to give that up and let something else come in to offer me, right?
Exactly. I got a guy that I'm working with that's doing the same thing I was doing. And I said, well, have you prayed the prayer yet? He said, what prayer? That one.
Yeah.
Have you told God, regardless of what it takes, you want to get sober? He said, oh, no, I'm not. I said, until you're ready to pray that, I said, you're going to keep drinking. I said, you really don't have a choice. I said, you need more alcohol to get you into willingness, to submit, to make you submit, to beat you up some more,
So what do you tell somebody who has an issue with God? And so maybe they're coming from the approach of a higher power or whatever their approach is. Maybe it's just not
Right.
God. How do you approach that, like with a sponsee?
Well, there's a couple of ways that, I've prayed over that and listened to different people talk about it. And when I talk to a sponsee, the first thing that we talk about, we start going through the steps almost immediately, because we got to get down to the reasons why they drank, and one thing that I've learned, that you can do some substitutions in the steps. Like when you see the word higher power or God, you can substitute the word truth for that. Or you can substitute the word love, would be another thing, because God is love. So you can substitute love. Either one of those will help lead folks normally in the right direction. And there's a lot of the program you can work without a God belief. Like, for example, the powerlessness. Okay, there's things you can control and things you cannot control, no matter if you believe in a God or not. And eventually what people start with is they can believe in the room or AA is their God. That there's people there that it's worked for them, so maybe it will work for me. That there's a God and it's not me is another place that you can go. You can believe that the surroundings around you, that there's a positive force that's more than you, and that will help. You can take it as far out there as you want to. And I try to be patient with people and not impose my belief. That's a great thing about AA that I have found is that they tell you you've got to believe in something other than yourself, but they never tell you what that has to be.
So you have free choice to do that, and ultimately, the mission of it is to understand that there is a power greater than ourselves, right? And that's really the bottom line to it.
Yeah, and I've had Christian friends that have had problems with that. Said, hey, why don't they don't say Jesus, so I'm not interested in it. And I want to say, who the hell cares, Yeah. I want to say, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think God is quite all right with that as long as we just crack the door. One of the teachings say if you just crack the door of willingness, that's all you have to do to make a start.
Yeah.
Because that's what it takes is just to start the willingness and believe in something other than yourself. And I think God comes in there and I don't understand it, Shane, because I was taught, hey, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And if Jesus is not Lord of your life, God ain't doing anything for you. That's just the way I was taught from small, And so me seeing God do miraculous things in people's lives that have no belief in Jesus whatsoever. And I'm like, how is this working? I don't understand it. And I said, well, wait a minute. It's one of those things that's way above my pay grade. I don't even try to figure that out. What I've learned to do is share what's happening in my life. They call it your experience, strength, and hope, and then leave the rest up to God. And if somebody gets it, great. If they don't, I don't try to tell anyone what to do. I'll usually start a conversation with, well, this is what happened with me, or this is how I did it. And when I talk to my sponsor, that's what he says. He says, this is how I did it. And in my experience, this or this. And my first sponsor told me, he says, you go into meetings, he says, you keep your mouth shut. He says, you have nothing that they need. I said, what? He says, you don't need to be talking. And then when I finally started talking, he would, after the meeting, he'd pull me aside. He says, what you said wasn't right. I said, come on. He said, what you said was this, and that's not the way it really is. It's really like this,
Yeah.
And he just stayed on my behind the whole time. But I tell sponsees that they're supposed to, they go to meetings to hear experience, strength, and hope. They don't have much yet. So they don't need to hear their inexperience, weakness, and despair. They need to save that for me. That's why they have a sponsor, is because they go to a meeting to share what's working in their life for the newcomer, for the other person who needs it.
Yeah, and
that's why you're there.
That's a really good point too, because I think that can tend to get even in groups that's not a 12-step group. I've been in other groups too, where it maybe it's a well, I'll leave the specifics out of what kind of group, but point being is that we're not there to share all of our dirt stories and all of our stuff that, well, this is why this is going down. And I think that when you get caught in a situation like that, and to your point, it's there to show the positiveness to the newcomer. That can be a big turnoff for people. And they can, they may say, well, you know what? I'm not that bad, or I'm not, you know what I mean? This isn't for me. And then they may never come back because of one bad experience. And we hear a lot about that in the church, in 12-step, meetings, and just in life in general. So I really like that you point that out, that it's not about, going to something and necessary. It's not a counseling session, right? It's not go find a therapist if that's what you need.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't be open and we can't talk about our feelings and stuff. I mean, there's a line between that, but I think that's really important to point out.
And also too, that's why we have sponsors in AA, and I believe, by the way, that you can get sober a lot of different ways, not just AA, but that's what's happened for me. So anyone, any direction that works for them is fantastic.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that at all. But in AA, that's why we're taught to get a sponsors, because they're the ones we tell our secrets to. They're the ones that can really help us. When we go to a meeting and we just throw up all over the meeting, which I see happen, that a meeting makes a poor sponsor, because a lot of people use a meeting for their sponsor, and then you don't ask for advice in meetings. You go there to share your experience, strength, and hope, so that the newcomer or someone who's in need can hear what they may need. It's why you're there. You're not there. Even if you go to pick up a chip, that's not for you. That's for you to show how it's working for you, to encourage the newcomer.
So when you hear the question, I know I've heard the question. I don't know if you have. I'm assuming that you have. Why do I need a sponsor? What would your advice be, or your opinion, or your thought on why somebody needs a sponsor and the importance of a sponsor?
I'll tell you why I need a sponsor. Back to my experience. Okay.
I love it.
Why I need a sponsor is that I need a guide. I need someone who can hear the things I'm thinking, because in my head things sound so good.
Yeah.
Or so bad. And when I get them out and I can talk to them, to someone in confidence, I can see them clearer, and I have someone who has experience in the things I have experience in applying the program and practicing the principles, and they can tell me in their experience how they handled similar situations. And it's all life stuff. If you look at the steps, only the first one and the last one mention alcohol. The rest don't even mention alcohol.
Yeah.
It's because this is about a program for living, a design to help you with everything that goes on in life. So if you have a life problem, they've probably had the same problem in some form. So because we all have the same problems, they're just manifest different ways, and we all have anger to deal with, or we have a resentment to deal with, or somebody cuts us off in traffic, or, we get pissed off at our wife, or whatever the case, But all that stuff is normal stuff that we all have. And then once we verbalize it, then we look at it and analyze, okay, what is my part? This is how I'm being selfish. This is how we correct it. This is the tool we use to correct that,
Let's kind of pinpoint on that part, because you said something I think that's really important there. In any situation, whether it's something that is as simple as, getting pissed off at somebody for cutting you off or whatever, to maybe a more specific past situation that something terrible has happened to somebody.
Right.
How do we come to that realization and start to address the fact of what was my part in it? Even if, because that's a big part of the healing process, right? That's a big part of keeping, when we talk about keeping our side of the street clean and cleaning those messes up, is taking that personal responsibility. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do, especially if it's something that's a traumatic event. How did you deal with something like that in your own, personal experience, and taking that self-responsibility?
That's why I think it's important that you work the steps and work them quickly, because all the promises, if you go to an AA meeting, most of the time they read the promises at the first of the meeting, how great, wonderful everything's going to be.
Yeah.
what people don't realize is what they're reading. It says that you'll be amazed when by the time you're halfway through. What they mean is halfway through the 9th step. So they've taken the readings from the 9th step reading. So what that means is you've already worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 before you're getting those promises in your life that you're seeing, and the not struggling and all of that, I think, is after 10 or 11. It's after that, so you've got all those things going on. So it's about getting in and working the steps, because if you look at step 12, it says we've had a spiritual awakening, which is what we all want, is a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So you don't get the awakening by just going to meetings, because meetings are not going to fix you.
Yeah.
You get the awakening by working the steps, and normally that's with a sponsor. And so, and what you start to do really in the steps is you realize that you're powerless, that your thinking's insane, that you got to turn your will and your life over to God. Then you say, how do I do all that? Well, you do it by taking care of your character defects and become willing and humble and ask God to remove all that. Then make your amends list, and first you clean up your relationship with God through your character defects, and then you go and you clean up your relationship with other people in the 9th step. So you go through this process, and then you maintain it daily. So you learn the tools as you clean up the old things in life with a sponsor, and you clean those things up, and you talk about it. And once you do that, you learn tools that you can use when new things come up, because new things come up because it's life. Because this whole deal's not about changing the people around you, it's about changing you. So it's about making you to where no matter what's going on, you're okay with it. You may not be enjoying it, but you can be at peace.
Because I'm not gonna change anybody else.
No,
right?
No.
I can't change somebody's opinion or somebody's attitude. But like we spoke about this morning in our meeting, it's not. What did you say? It's not my job to shove the light bulb up their ass and turn it on.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but it's my job to hold the light and be and that's it, and do my part. And if people see that for what it is, then awesome. You know what I mean?
And your part's going to invariably be something to do with service. One of the being the we're talking the Christian side, I'll quote a verse. It's Galatians 5, talking about your freedom. And it says that your freedom, and this is the Message version, says it really well. It talks about how your freedom grows. And they said your freedom does not grow by doing the things you want to do. I thought that's what freedom was, right?
Yeah.
It says your freedom grows by serving one another in love. So, and I think what the freedom is not the freedom to do whatever you want to do. It's the freedom from having to do what you want to do.
See. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
That's where it's at, So I think it invariably has something to do with service. It's something to do with doing for someone else. And that's a biblical principle that I never hear talked about that much, where if you have a problem, if you seek out someone else with a similar problem, to help, then there's a principle of reciprocity is what it's called, where if you have a problem, you seek out someone else to meet their need, and then your need will be met.
Yeah, and we've had that conversation a lot, or I don't even in the midst of the conversation, I'll come to you with something like, well, this is going down, or I'm feeling like this, or whatever, and then it's funny because you bring that up a lot. Well, what I usually do is I go help somebody. It's like, it sounds so simple, but it really does work. And when you actually apply it, because what's either the spiritual side behind that is it helps us get out of ourselves, number one, right? But then number two, if we're going back to God, that's God's intention for us, right? It's to help other people and live a life of service.
And it's plain, really, because Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It didn't say wait till they do for you, then do for them.
Yeah.
It said you do unto others first. Without
expecting anything.
I don't know about that. That's hard. But yeah, you're right. Sure you're right. That's but it's a service deal. It's not a manipulation deal. You know. But the thing is, we've got to take the action. We've got to do the action first. And it seems like for me, and there's other, throughout the word, there's other places where that's talked about. In Corinthians, it talks about that God takes us, and through the bad times and hard times that happens, he brings us alongside others that we can help through those same hard times. So that principle's at work. And I think that's, I don't know how many times I've had an issue, like maybe have a financial issue I prayed about, and then all of a sudden God would send me somebody that I needed to give some money to. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've got a need. It's not I need, but my need is that I need to help them, so that I bring room for God. Because like in the Beatitudes, it says, when we find ourselves full of care, we'll be cared for.
Yeah.
Same deal.
Well, how many times has that happened to you? And I know my homie Josh and I had a good conversation a few weeks back about when, like, just that example you gave. I was praying, I needed help financially, and then I'm supposed to give, instead of receive. How many times does it happen where you finally submit that and you do offer it up, and then the tenfold return on that without expectation comes back to you, and it happens often, right?
It happens often. I feel I am always provided for, and I stopped a long time ago doing trying to keep account, of what I gave versus what I got, because I have progressed over time, Shane, to where I really feel that everything in my life is a gift. So there's really no way to put dollar value on everything that I have. It's not as if I'm in a bargaining relationship with God, or I need more money, so I need to go give more, so God will give me 100-fold return kind of business. It's not a tit for tat or that kind of a deal.
Yeah.
It's really more like, God, I offer this moment to you, show me what I need to do, and if it's something I need to give, but I always know that I'm taken care of, and that God provides for me, like the 3-year-old instead of the 30-year-old,
Yeah.
because I think we really need to narrow it back. I think our dependency needs to be a 3-year-old dependency, like a 3-year-old with his father, rather than a 30-year-old making a business deal and working with his father.
Trying to figure everything else out.
Yeah. Getting gold stars, and all that stuff.
I want to share a quick story that it really relates to that very well. And I think it's a great example. I think I've shared it with you before, but a buddy of mine, James, from our men's group a few months back, and you were talking about the gifts from God, right? Well, he had a coworker who was really going through a rough time, and he was losing his wife to cancer. And, eventually they had some conversations, and I think his coworker at the time obviously was having a tough time losing his wife, but he didn't have that spiritual connection. He didn't understand it, and he wasn't, but as it kind of unveiled that situation, he started asking more questions to James. And James said, well, eventually the time came, unfortunately, when his wife passed away. And shortly after that, they were sitting in the truck, on some downtime at work, and they got into the conversation again. And obviously he was having a tough time with just losing his wife and going through that emotional state. And he kind of asked him, like, what can I do? And James said, what came to him and what he told him was that, like, for him, he looked at his wife and he looked at his kids as a gift from God. So they weren't his. It was a gift from God, and it was his job to serve them and to do the things to provide for them and that, in that kind of aspect. And so in other words, it kind of made sense to this guy after that. And he said that I don't know how long it was afterwards, but he came back to him and he said that moment when he was able to kind of understand that, it helped him, immensely get through that grieving process and understand it like that. So, I guess it is about perspective, but it also bring it back around what we're talking about, the importance of having a spiritual connection to something greater than ourselves, whether it's Jesus, whether it's a God, whether it's, the rooms of AA.
Yeah, exactly. Because the one thing that talking about that reciprocity again, I want to mention one more thing before we move on with that. That's the thing that Bill Wilson found out before the first AA meeting, was that he got relief when he helped another drunk. He had a spiritual experience about 6 months before the first meeting in like 35, whenever it was. And he started going to bars and pulling people off of bar stools and telling them how much they needed to quit drinking, and started talking like all this stuff to people. I mean, this was what he did for 6 months, and nobody got sober. Nobody.
Yeah.
And he was talking to his wife about it, and he was discouraged and said, he says, I'm doing all this work, but nobody's listening. He was going to bars. I think he was going to what they called sanitariums at the time, where they put drunks, and they really had no treatment. And he'd go talk to them, and nobody got sober.
So he was literally going out chasing and trying to spread the word and trying to say, you need to get sober.
Yeah. And he told his wife, I'm very discouraged. Nobody's gotten sober. And she looked at him and said, well, you stayed sober. And the light bulb went off, and he had. Wow. And he had never been sober that long for years and years, Yeah. And so it was like, it's working because I'm sharing with someone else. It's back to that again, So he got to Ohio, Akron, I think was where it was. And he was had a business meeting that failed. He was a stockbroker, and he had a business meeting that had dropped, and he wanted to have a drink. So before he went to the bar to have a drink, he stopped at the phone booth and started calling. I think he was calling churches was where he started calling, looking for a drunk to talk to. Outside of, outside of that, he wanted someone he could talk to.
Yeah. Is there anybody who's drunk there? Can you get him on the phone? I don't care.
You have any drunks that you're a friend of any congregate? That's exactly what he was doing.
That's incredible.
Could you imagine? I'd never take that much energy.
Yeah.
But he knew if he could find someone to talk to. So eventually, I think one of the pastors, one clergy that he talked to, told him to call this particular lady that may know someone. And so he called, and it ended up he stayed sober that night. The next afternoon, he had a meeting. They hooked him up. She said, I've got a doctor friend that's for sure an alcoholic that you could talk to. And so she called, and the guy was drunk, passed out at the time. He was a doctor. He was a proctologist, actually, there back in 1935.
Isn't that the butt doctor?
Let's not go down that road.
Dude, I could go down the butt doctor all day, but okay. Thank you for stopping
me. But I drink too. But anyway.
Gosh.
So he sobered up the next day, and he went to meet with the guy, and he told his son, and I heard his son say this actually before his son passed in a meeting, at a convention. And he told him, he said, son, just wait on me. I'll be 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll be at 15 minutes, and I'll be back. So they met, and he was a lot older than Bill. That's Dr. Bob. He was a lot older than Bill Wilson. Uh-huh. And he told Bill, he said, son, he says, I've tried everything to stop. He says, there's nothing that I can, that's worked. He said, I've tried church. I've tried everything. There's nothing. I'm just going to be an alcoholic. There's nothing I can do. And what Bill told him was, he said, listen, I'm not here to help you. I'm here to help me.
I love it.
Because I'm here to keep me sober, not to get you sober.
Yeah.
It was like, it just shocked the guy, and they sat and talked all evening, and then Dr. Bob sobered up, And I think he had one more drink after that, one more drunk after that, and then he was done, So that's the reason, and that's the reason why when you go to AA that a lot of times they're so adamant just about alcohol, that they don't want anything else in there. It's called singleness of purpose.
Yeah.
It's because I get hope when I hear another alcoholic. I don't get hope for whatever reason from someone that has a pill problem or someone that has a sex problem or whatever else there is. I don't get the same hope, and I don't understand why it's that way.
Yeah.
But it is, and so that's the whole reason for that, is because of that principle at work. Well,
we're talking about serving others, and we talked about this earlier today, and I really wanted to have you touch on it if you didn't mind. The importance of serving others, the importance of service, and if you told me a story about a guy named Jim that you help out, and if you don't mind sharing that experience on what that's like for you, and then just kind of I know we've already kind of been talking about it, but just kind of the mindset behind that.
A few years ago, I really felt impressed that I needed to do more service, that I just was not doing enough service. And I think it was just God stirring me up, that I needed to do more. And I was, so I just said, okay, God, I'll do more service. What do you have? And I started going to a noon meeting that I don't normally go to that has newcomers, because my meeting has more seasoned, older AA folks.
Let me. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I didn't preface something actually. So let me say this too, because I think this is a big part of it. Is that we had kind of talked about waiting for those big moments in life, right? We're waiting for those huge moments that either we're gonna find it or God's gonna show it to us, and we have this huge thing, and then but we forget about the little moments, right? Or the little things that may be even bigger than the huge thing. So I just want to preface that, because I think it's important to point out.
Yeah, and because I started going and I started looking for all these newcomers that I could take and change their lives. That kind of thing was what I was thinking.
Exactly.
I'm going to come. I'm here. Where are you? So God had to work on me on that. And what happened was He put a guy in my life that was an AA guy that was in a nursing home, and I found myself going and visiting him. I started visiting him. And every week I started going, and it's a little bit of a drive, 20 miles or so from my house.
Yeah, that's
so I run over to a neighboring town, and I go and visit him. Then I started taking him to a meeting and going to get Kentucky Fried Chicken like he likes, and and having lunch and getting his groceries. And that was my Friday thing to do when I thought I needed to be doing real estate.
Yeah.
I found myself spending half the day in a neighboring town taking care of this guy, and I was like, this can't be what I need to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing bigger things than this, and then I kind of heard the where Jesus talked about, you love God with all your heart, then you love your neighbor as yourself. So it was about loving the folks around you, not about going and saving the world or, something in Africa. It's about the people around you, So I started doing that. And then after a while, you have this thing you check out, a page you sign for each person. And I'd opened up to his page and looked, and over the last year, I was the only one to get this guy out of the nursing home. No one else had taken him anywhere, and I just teared up, and I was like, God, I'm right where I'm supposed to be, Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's incredible how you this is the most important thing I do all week. It's bigger than any real estate deal I do or anything else. Is what I come and do for Jim, So I still do it. He's he can't get out now, and I go buy lunch and bring it for him, and get whatever groceries he needs, But I try to go every week and do that for him, because that's the kind of things that's important that we do. And sometimes those turn into something else, but it doesn't matter, because even the outcome of your service is not important. What's important is that we narrow it down to today, down to the moment. And if I can submit my moment I'm in and say, okay, God, show me your will, and let me, give me the power to carry it out, whatever that is in this moment. It's the only time I can do that. So I really have to try hard, and I always benefit from making it about whoever I'm doing, if it's business or if it's someone I'm actually doing real service for. If I take them into consideration and say, what can I do for you rather than what you can do for me? Then it usually works out the way it needs to.
Well, I think that story, and thank you for sharing that, man. I think it's a great story, and it's a great example. And it really ties back even to the Dr. Bob and Bill, in the fact that, so not only are you serving by doing that, but you're also helping to keep yourself sober too. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. And if we can take that mindset that when we have a need, okay, who can I go help? Rather than looking inward when we have a need, if we look outward, I don't think we'll be disappointed. I really don't think we'll be disappointed.
So I know we're coming up on time here. I just have one last thing I'd like to kind of wrap this up with. And this kind of stems from there's quite a bit of emails, especially around the first of the year, because there's a lot of people that make commitments and they really truly want to stop drinking, and they want to cut back, or they just want to start on that path. And there's one in particular, and I won't say his name, but good guy. I've talked to him a couple times, and it's the classic thing. He'll get a couple days, he really wants it, and then he'll go back to it. Get a couple days. He's got a family, got a respectable job, doing the right things, but just can't, he can't seem to, and he's asked me, well, I just can't, or he told me I can't figure it out. Like, what do I do? So with your experience, you've worked with a lot more guys than I have, one-on-one, and let's just role play here without the French maid costumes and the clown shit and the weird stuff, right?
I don't want to envision you in that, man.
I don't want to either. That's disgusting. I'm sorry I brought it up. But let's just say, for instance, I came to you and I said, look, buddy, like, man, I love my family. I have a good job. I'm just really struggling right now. I get a couple days and then, sure enough, I'm weak and I go right back to my old ways of drinking. And, it's really starting to get bad. It's affecting me at work. It's affecting my being as a dad, as a husband. What do you kind of direct somebody? What advice can you give them? I mean, what can you offer them, to maybe get that process started of trying to, have a spiritual awakening, I guess?
I would share with them how I did it, and then let them gather from that what they may. The only thing I really know, Shane, is what worked for me. So I would never, I wouldn't tell them directly, you need to go to meetings, you need to do this, you need to do this. I would say, this is what I did. I started seeking a spiritual solution to my problem. I started going to meetings. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps.
Yeah.
And in doing those things, I started seeing a spiritual change. And I got to the point to where I was willing to say, God, I want to be sober no matter what that takes. You got to do this or it's not going to happen. And when I got to that point, I was able to start putting some time together. And I would share it in more time than that, in more detail. But basically that's what I would share with them, and then they could gather. If they said, oh, I don't want to go, I don't like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what worked for me, and I'm sure it would work for you too. I mean, I see it work for people every day, so that's really the way I would approach that, because really, I don't know what's best for someone. And for me, I had to drink until I was willing, because I have people ask me too. I had a family member ask me, said, well, my spouse is drinking every day and wants to drink more. What should I do? And I said, just let them drink. And they said, what do you mean? Should I try to cut it off? Or I said, no. I said, make sure they have it available. And they said, why? I said, what are you talking about? I said, listen, nothing convinced me, if you're talking about from my experience, nothing convinced me other than alcohol. No circumstances, no consequences. It was alcohol that eventually convinced me that, that beat me into submission, really.
Yeah. And back to Bill going to bars for 6 months trying to tell people what to do. It doesn't work. Yeah. And there's a reason actually that I brought that question up. Obviously, one, to try to get some insight for those out there who might be going in that point, but also working together, we've gotten to know each other a bit well. And I had a feeling that that's the way you would answer that. And I want to bring this back full circle right now, because this episode is really about, the importance of a sponsor, and do I need a sponsor, and, how do I get a sponsor? That right there is a great example of the importance of a sponsor, of somebody, number one, to be real with you. And then number two, to help guide you, not to tell you what to do, not to try to run your life, but somebody who's been through it before and can share some openness with you. Such an important thing, man. And since we're on the topic, man, I just want to tell you, I appreciate your time, and the amount of time that we've spent together and getting to know. And I didn't mention this, maybe, I don't think I mentioned in the beginning, for those out there listening who don't know, Buddy's all the way out in Georgia. I'm in California. Okay. So you call it randomly, or you call it an act of God or a stroke of luck. I don't know, whatever anybody wants to call it. There's a reason that we were connected in this. And I guess point being is, when you put yourself out there, you too can find those connections, or they will find you, I guess is a better way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. Because we talk on Skype, and it works great. It works great. I've never had anyone I've sponsored that I haven't sat down with. But when you approach me about it, I said, well, I've never tried that, but it should work. I talked to my sponsor about it actually, and he had someone he sponsored by telephone one time up in New York, and I said, okay. I said, well, it should work, and I see no reason it won't, and so, but it's, man, this is a great deal. I mean, the whole thing is because see, I stay sober by helping you and the other guys I help, and it's just reciprocal. The whole thing is because it's all about making us useful, and this is the way we're useful. Is by the greatest thing I can do, or any of us can do, in my opinion, is help somebody else get sober and help somebody else get that spiritual connection they didn't have before. And I think that's why we're here. I think that's why we're here.
Buddy, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate everything that you're doing out there in the service work that you do. Any parting words for the Sober Guy listeners, the Sober Guy community out there?
The only thing I would say is back to what we were talking about. If any of this is an issue for you, just offer it to God and say, what do I do with this? Do what it takes to get me sober. I'm ready. And then just hold on because whatever comes next may not be pleasant, because you're driven to the point of where you'll become willing, and so, but that's where it starts. That was the defining moment for me. So, but no, man, I appreciate you too. And, it's all good.
You can find more information about us at www.thatsoberguy.com. Thanks to our sponsors, Foundations Recovery Network, DxRx, Love to Sober Nation as well. Buddy, you are the man. I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, sir.